I mentioned this yesterday. One of the issues, I think I mentioned earlier this morning, Planned Parenthood is one of the issues that Congress is going to wrestle with when they return after Labor Day. And again, I want to encourage you to get that link to the petition and circulate that. I really would like to be able to take 500,000 signatures to the state, to the Capitol with Republican leaders and tell them where the American people are. The second issue I brought up was the issue of Iran and the nuclear deal that the president has negotiated with Iran. General Boykin was actually having a meeting with John McCain and mentioned we were having this conference of pastors. So Senator McCain called saying, I would really like to speak to these pastors about this issue of Iran. He said, of all of the votes that I have cast in the United States Senate, this, I believe, will be the most important vote I've ever cast. And he wanted to communicate directly with you, and it was scheduling. We couldn't fit him in. And so he has sent a brief video message to you specifically for this conference to discuss this issue. So if you would please turn your attention to the screens for just a moment.
Thank you, Dr. Graham, for hosting this important meeting of faith leaders. And thank you, Dr. Floyd, Reverend Jackson, Reverend Falwell, and my good friends Tony Perkins and General Jerry Boykin for helping to convene this group. You could not be meeting at a more critical time. Congress will soon consider President Obama's Iran nuclear deal. It's not an exaggeration to say that the national security of both the United States and our most trusted ally, Israel, hang in the balance. The administration suggests that any criticism of this deal is tantamount to a call for war. Such scare tactics are to be expected from this administration, but they have no place in a debate of this magnitude. Put simply, the Iran nuclear deal is a bad deal and it must be rejected. As Henry Kissinger has observed, the basic failure has been the shift of this administration's approach to nuclear diplomacy from preventing proliferation to managing it. But Iran is more than an arms control challenge. It's a geopolitical challenge that demands a comprehensive strategy. For years, many of us have urged the administration to adopt a regional strategy to counter Iran's hostile activities in the Middle East. Unfortunately, if such a strategy exists, there is no evidence of it. Iran is clearly on the offensive across the Middle East. Its malign activities from Iraq and Syria to Lebanon and Yemen are provoking a regional sectarian conflict of massive proportions. We cannot and should not divorce our nuclear diplomacy with Iran from the larger strategic challenge that Iran poses. And I am concerned about the impact this agreement may have on the growing tensions and conflicts in the Middle East. You know, President Obama likes to say that this deal is built on verification rather than trust, but consider what we have already verified about Iran's activities and intentions and contrast that to our own strategic drift. We know that over the past decade, Iran's military and intelligence operatives have stepped up their destabilizing activities in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Bahrain, Gaza, and elsewhere. Iran did this despite the full pressure of sanctions. Imagine what it could do with even a small portion of the windfall of sanctions relief, estimated at roughly $60 billion or possibly much more. It is reasonable to assume that billions of additional dollars will soon flow to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and Quds Force. Money that will likely be used to boost arms supplies to Iran's terrorist proxies and double down on Bashar Assad right when he needs it most. We know that Iran intends to become the dominant military power in the Middle East. Yet despite repeated assurances that negotiations were strictly limited to the nuclear program, at the last minute, the administration made major concessions related to conventional weapons and ballistic missiles. In 5 years, this agreement would lift the international arms embargo against Iran freeing up the regime to acquire advanced conventional military capabilities from eager sellers such as Russia and China. In 8 years, it would lift restrictions on ballistic missiles whose only conceivable military purpose would be to deliver nuclear weapons against America and its allies. These concessions have dangerous implications for the men and women serving in our military. This agreement would enable Iran to construct the kind of advanced military arsenal that could raise the cost of employing our military option should Iran violate its obligations, which I believe it will. In short, if this agreement fails, the lives of U.S. service members could be at greater risk. We know that our allies and partners in the Middle East have increasingly come to believe that America is withdrawing from the region and is doing so at a time when Iran is aggressively seeking to advance its ambitions. Now we have reached an agreement that will not only legitimize the Islamic Republic as a threshold nuclear state with an industrial enrichment capability, but will also unshackle this regime in its long-held pursuit of conventional military power and may actually consolidate the current regime's control in Iran for years to come. And that is perhaps most troubling of all about this agreement, what it means for America's credibility in the Middle East. For decades, the United States has sought to suppress security competition in the region between states with long histories of hostility toward one another and to prevent war. I fear this agreement could further undermine our ability and willingness to play that vital stabilizing role. It could, in fact, trigger an unprecedented arms race in the Middle East. For the sake of our own security as well as that of our allies, I believe we cannot afford to let that happen. My friends, I intend to work tirelessly in the coming weeks to ensure that Congress rejects this bad deal. But in order for us to achieve success, we all need your help. This deal is strategically important, but let there be no doubt. The question of whether or not an evil regime will possess the world's deadliest weapons is a moral one. The security of our nation, the safety of our friends, and the fate of millions who live and worship in ancient and holy lands in the Middle East hang in the balance. So I urge you today, as people of faith and citizens of conscience, let your voice be heard. Thank you.
As soon as Congress returns, they will have until the 17th of September, based upon the timeline, to deal with this issue. The way it'll play out is that the Congress will put forth a disapproval resolution to the deal. The President will veto that. That comes back to Congress, and the Congress then has to override a veto, and that is where the issue lies. The House probably has the votes to do it. The Senate does not, although there are now high-level Democratic members of the Senate, like Chuck Schumer, who have come out against the deal. And this should be a matter of both prayer and action, encouraging your members to contact their member of Congress, as well as their two senators expressing opposition to this deal. And if you'd like more information, you can go to our website or maybe see General Boykin later this afternoon. This is a very, very dangerous deal, not only for America, but to our key ally, Israel.